Welcome to Banyan Books, Branches of Wisdom, celebrating the joy of bright ideas and heartful lifelong learning. Branches of Wisdom is a series of intimate conversations with the world's most influential authors and visionaries. We explore spirituality and the human mind, ecology and culture. Most episodes are recorded with a live audience. You can join our live events and submit questions to your favorite guests. Check out our upcoming schedule at banyan.com. Since 1970, Banyan Books has been a rich oasis at the crossroads of wisdom and philosophy, offering resources for humanity's evolving paths. We're a locally owned, independent bookstore in the heart of Vancouver's Kitsilano neighborhood. Visit us in person or shop online at banyan.com. Please subscribe, follow, like, and leave your reviews for the podcast. And now, enjoy. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Branches of Wisdom, the Banyan Books podcast. I'm your host, Ross McKeechee, and very excited today that we have Ron Pevny joining as our special guest. Before we get to his introduction, Banyan Books acknowledges that although we have people joining us from all over the world for these live streaming events, the physical location of Banyan Books and Sound is on the traditional and unceded territories of the Coast Salish peoples, including the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh nations. Most of Banyan's podcasts and event series are free. We welcome your donations to keep these programs accessible for all. Just go ahead and click on the PayPal link below and share whatever you feel inspired. Towards the end of our conversation today as well, we will be taking your questions from the live audience for Mr. Ron Pevny. So go ahead and start typing those into the comments field on YouTube as we go through our conversation, and we'll get to as many of those as we can. Ron Pevny is founding director at the Center for Conscious Eldering, where he and his colleagues share a deep commitment to supporting the development of conscious elders in a world urgently in need of elder wisdom and gifts. Ron is a certified saging leader and has served as the host for 3 Transforming Aging Summits presented by the Shift Network and co-host for the Turning Points interview series presented by Saging International. Today, Ron Pevny is with Banyan Books in conversation about his book, Conscious Living, Conscious Aging, Claiming the Gifts of Elderhood. It was originally published in 2014, and this new 10th anniversary expanded and updated edition was released in July 2024. A bit about the book. The baby boomer generation is reaching retirement age with unprecedented good health and resources, and is no longer satisfied with their parents' approach to aging. Ron Pevny's provocative model of conscious eldering opens the door to the rich possibilities of intentionally growing into elderhood, as contrasted with merely growing old. Through advice, practices, and personal stories, this book will help you distill wisdom from your many years of life experience, navigate loss and grief, identify new passions and goals, and remain engaged and relevant as you enter life's later chapters, creating a lasting legacy in a healthier world for the generations to follow. Very important work. I'm really excited. If you want to learn more about our guest today, you can visit his website, which is centerforconsciouseldering.com. Banyan community, a warm welcome for Ron Pevny.
Thank you, Ross. I feel honored to be talking with you today.
Oh, the honor's mine, Ron. Thanks so much for joining us. Now, this is a really fantastic book. You really take us through a journey. And in the preface, you write, humanity can no longer consider its many millions of older adults as liabilities rather than valuable resources. The role of elder must be reclaimed and honored around the world.
Mm-hmm.
Why is that true today, Ron?
Well, I believe that's true because, Ross, there are so many people reaching retirement age. And by the way, retirement means about a million different things in today's world. But there's so many people reaching that particular age, more than ever in human history. We have longevity that we've never had before. We have access to resources that, all the world's wisdom traditions from around the world. We have access to so much of that. And people have so many experiences, so many skills. Many people have a lot of true wisdom. And to think that you reach a certain point where you quote unquote retire and then don't have a commitment to giving those gifts and that wisdom to the world is a huge loss for the world. But I think it's also a terrible loss for individuals because so many people, aren't retiring and then dying a couple or 3 years later. Many people are living 20 or 30 years, a precious gift, a precious opportunity, unique in human history. And to give their gifts, to have a commitment to serving and to their own growth, that's what life is about. That's what I'm passionate about. I want to see people aging that way and not just aging into growing old, but rather growing whole. It is possible. And my passion and commitment is helping to support people in doing that.
Wonderful, wonderful. And can you just clarify for our audience, what, in your view, what distinguishes an elder from a person who is older or in their old age?
Elderhood is a stage in human growth, a stage in the growth of the psyche. It's archetypal, it's built in, but it doesn't automatically happen. It requires some conscious preparation. It requires conscious intention. And the elders throughout history who have served their communities in the role of elder have prepared for it. Their community has helped them to prepare for it. They had various kinds of ceremonies that, in a sense, were rites of passage to help that elder archetype emerge so that they could serve as elders in their community. In today's world, we have so little understanding of how people grow and how people grow through life transitions. And so little understanding that there is a life stage called elderhood. And so with that, so many people do not have the opportunity to ever bring forth the elder within. And so they just continue to live and to have their sense of identity be tied up to who they have been in the past. And they get older and older and less able to do what they used to do back in their work life. And eventually they just get old without ever having achieved the potential they have in them to actually grow into elderhood. So to me, that's the big difference between just growing old and being an elder, or at least aspiring to and moving toward being an elder. And I guess I would say, Ross, that when I talk about elder, I don't talk so much as elder, being a noun, but I see it more as a verb, a process of eldering. I don't think you just cross some threshold and all of a sudden, I'm an elder, I'm going to wear my elder badge now, but rather it's a continual process of growth and unfolding that, even those that I have known, and I've been privileged to know some incredible elders and work with some in my life, even they would say that they are continuing to grow, to bring forth more and more of their elderhood as they age until the day they die.
So this is what you're calling conscious eldering or conscious aging. Is that right? You kind of seem to use the terms synonymously.
Yeah, I think the terms are often used synonymously. A lot of people use them synonymously. I prefer conscious eldering because conscious eldering, excuse me, it implies a real commitment toward growing into elderhood, which I think is different than just getting a little bit more conscious as you age. Having that goal in mind, that vision in mind, I think helps us to focus people's energy, to focus people's intention. It shows that there is a goal, and it's not just a matter of being the same person you've always been, but trying to be a little bit more conscious here and there. If you understand the distinction I'm trying to make there.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you. Yeah. I'm really curious to ask you about the concept of retirement in our society. In the intro in the book, you share the story of two friends, Stan and Carol. They're both approaching retirement in different ways.
Yes.
Stan, he kind of goes more for that commonly accepted idea of retirement, while Carol is a little more engaged in continuing to grow and contribute in different ways at that stage of her life. And I'll just share a quote that leads into a question. You write the following: "The ideal held up by the mainstream prescription for aging is retirement as early as possible, followed by an extended chapter of leisure and disengagement. At the same time, this prescription offers little guidance for how seniors can contribute the skills and wisdom they've acquired over many decades of living and learning." And I know my personal experience, Ron, is seeing that retirement is kind of held up as this amazing period of life, but it often seems to leave people with kind of a void in their lives, and they're
Yes.
lacking a sense of purpose or meaning. So what are your thoughts on this cultural idea of retirement overall, the pros and cons of it?
Oh, Ross, I think the pros are that retirement provides a unique opportunity to acknowledge growth, or the beginnings of growth, into a new chapter called, or a new stage of life called elderhood. It's a marker. For many people, it is kind of, what catalyzes a real passage. For many people, it is a secular rite of passage, if you will. And I think that it gives people an opportunity after they have, been contributing to the world in whatever ways they've been contributing through their careers, through their work. It gives people an opportunity, excuse me, to stop, to intentionally give themselves a period of time. The way that a lot of young people after college, they take a gap year before they go on and do whatever they do next. It provides an opportunity for a gap year, if you will, for people to step back and say, okay, this is who I have been. Excuse me. This is who I have been. This is what I have done. This is what I have learned. These are my strengths. These are my weaknesses. I'm going to take some time now to just quiet down, to look at my life, to be with myself, and to see in this new stage of life called elderhood that I'm aspiring to, what really calls me now. How can I best contribute my gifts now in a new way that befits a new stage in life, when I don't have the energy I used to have, when I am suffering some very real losses and diminishments that comes with aging? How am I going to be able to find fulfillment and find a sense of a new self, rather than just continuing to try to be who I have been for as long as I could possibly pull it off until I can't pull it off anymore? And so retirement really is it's a gift. And if you view elderhood, as I do, as a time when we really can reach the fullness of our spiritual and emotional growth, if you view it that way, then retirement's a gift that gives us the space to not have to be working as hard as we've been working, to not have to be concentrating so much about our position in the external world, but rather to begin to focus on our inner lives and how we can grow the spirit in us, how we can find ways of serving that best reflect this new growth and the voice of the spirit in us telling us that as elders, this is how we can serve. And so I think retirement can offer some real opportunities. The sad thing is that so many people, as I think we all know, 20, 30 years before retirement, they're already talking about it, what they're going to retire from, But so few people have any sense of what they're retiring to. And many of those don't have a sense of elderhood at all. It's just a sense that, well, I'm retiring to more opportunity for a life of leisure or whatever. So I think retirement is very, very much being redefined now in many quarters. I'm sure that you're familiar with things like Mark Friedman's book, Mark Friedman's work and the Purpose Prize and everything, and his whole idea of people being able to have encore careers. And that's one of the wonderful gifts of retirement, is that people can actually, after they retire from full-time work, people have an opportunity, hopefully after taking a little time to quiet down and reflect, to then give their gifts in a new way. Call it a mini career, call it an encore career. Retirement offers that demarcation between one part of your life and another that really can be a gift for a lot of people. But at the same time, as you said earlier, Ross, it can leave a big hole or a big void for people who haven't really prepared for it in any way, don't have any idea about the doors that it can possibly open up, because we are so identified with our careers in the society we live in that once that career is over, for many people, who am I? Who am I? What's the meaning? What's the purpose? So it can be a very difficult time for many people.
Yes. Ron, you touched on 30 years before retirement, people often are talking about what they're retiring from. That got me thinking about the planning phase leading up to retirement. And you touch on it in the book, how the focus is usually just on financial freedom and setting yourself up financially for retirement, yes, but not as much attention is given to the emotional and spiritual side of retirement. And so I'm wondering if you can comment on that in terms of leading up to the elder years, leading up to retirement. What kind of attention do you recommend people give to that side of things?
I don't think you can talk about conscious eldering at all if you don't talk about a commitment to growth. And Ross, a commitment to growth isn't something that the day you retire, you think, okay, I'm going to commit to growth. I'm going to go and I'm going to find myself a good workshop or two, and I'm going to start growing. As we age, it is very, very easy to more and more become slaves of habit. I think we all know that. We all see that. A lot of old patterns that may not serve us very well become deeply embedded in us. I believe that the kind of growth that is reflected in conscious eldering is the kind of growth that people should start doing when they're in their 30s, their 40s, beginning to think about how can I be growing? How can I start to heal some of the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune that have left their mark on me? Some of the woundings. How can I start looking at some of the habits I have that may just aren't going to serve me well moving forward? How can I get more deeply in touch with those soul qualities in me, with those special gifts in me that are my gift to the world? And beginning to do all of this kind of work when we are younger then makes it so much easier as we age to actually grow, to actually be more conscious, to actually transcend just being creatures of habit, to actually know what our purpose is, what our soul's gifts are. And that's work that we can be doing a long time ahead of time. And I think the other thing I would say about that is that, and I'm sure we're going to be talking about life transition a little bit in our conversation. The journey from midlife adulthood into elderhood is a major life transition. It requires a lot of letting go. It requires a lot of inner work. And when we're younger, if we start consciously attending to how we deal with the transitions of our lives, and we all have a lot of those, a lot of them are not the biggies, but some of them are along the way. As we start using them as opportunities to practice for how we can move through transitions and come out the other side having grown, being bigger people, then when we get to some of the biggies like the transition into elderhood, we are practiced. We know how to do it. We understand some of the dynamics. The more experience we have with that throughout our lives, the easier it's going to be when we have the biggies like retirement or like some of the big losses that inevitably are probably going to occur to all of us, in our elder years.
You're bringing up life transitions, and chapter 2 of the book is titled Life Transitions and Rites of Passage, Portals to. Can we talk a little bit about rites of passage? Why are those important? How, in terms of entering conscious elderhood, I know you lead retreats and workshops through the Center for Conscious Eldering, and this is a part of that process. So can you talk a little bit about what kind of a rite of passage would be involved in entering elderhood?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think the first part of your question was to talk a little bit about rites of passage.
Yes.
Ross, throughout history, most societies that we know of, before the industrial age, most societies understood the dynamics of life transition. And they had rites of passage to help people to move through transition. They understood that ceremony and rites of passage were always done in a ceremonial context, and they were done with the support of the community. They understood that ceremony and community are what help people to let go of a lot of those personality dynamics of who they have been in a previous stage, so that then they can move forward into a new beginning, into a new chapter. Because every transition, every major transition, involves a letting go, an ending, a severing from a phase of life. And then it involves a time in between when you don't know quite who you have been anymore. Let me say it differently. You're not who you have been anymore. You don't know who you are becoming. It's just an in-between time. Sometimes it's called the fertile void. Sometimes it's called the neutral zone. Sometimes it's called liminal space. It's all the same thing. But then gradually, by giving yourself that in-between time, and I talked about that in using the metaphor of a gap year, by giving yourself that quiet space, then the seeds of new beginning start to stir, and you start to get a sense of, okay, what's calling me in a new chapter in which I'm somehow going to be really essentially different than I was before. And so rites of passage were ceremonial processes that helped people to consciously move through that kind of a transition. And they were well prepared for it. When a young Native American went on top of the mountaintop, or the Aborigine went on the walkabout, they were well prepared for by their community. And then they went through this intensive period or everything is amplified. And then after the several days or whatever, then they were welcomed back to the community. They were helped to and supported in giving their gifts, as a new self that now in a new way will be in the community and making a significant contribution. And so that's how transitions throughout history have been honored. The transition into elderhood is a huge, huge transition. And our society has very little in the way of spiritually empowering rites of passage. And so organizations like mine and others have tried to create forms that work for people in the modern world that help them to experience those dynamics, help them to get in touch with what it means to let go of what it's time to let go of, helps them to experience that in-between time, that neutral zone time, helps them to know how to court glimpses of what's possible, what wants to emerge, and then helps them to emerge into a new chapter. And so what we do is we offer a program that helps people to move through all those steps. And we don't pretend that you go through one of our retreats and all of a sudden you could claim you're an elder. But what we give people is a real, a strong taste of what the whole process is. And they have to continue the work then. They can continue the journey into the fullness of elderhood. We just help to initiate them on a path and help them to firm up their commitment to this particular way of aging. Does that speak to your question, Ross?
Absolutely. That was a very comprehensive answer. Yeah, thank you. I wanted to touch on your own personal experience too. It seems like you mentioned, you talk about in the book, the health crisis that you experienced. And I'll just share a little quote. You said, "My trajectory solidified as I neared 60, when my first encounter with my mortality shook me to the core. The 10-day wait for biopsy results was the most powerful growth experience of my life to that point."
Yes.
Can you tell us a little bit more? It sounds like that life was almost pushing you through a rite of passage through this health crisis. Is that true?
Yeah, I think it definitely was. Very long story short, a few years before that, when I was in my mid-50s, a couple wonderful wise elders, 15 years more elder and more wise than me, invited me to join them in creating this program that we now call Choosing Conscious Elderhood. But here I am in my mid-50s. I'm helping them to teach a program on elderhood, and I felt like an imposter in many ways. And I felt like the people who were coming to our retreats, Ross, were dealing with fears and vulnerabilities and grief and woundings that were much deeper than anything I had personal experience with. And so for me to be over there, preaching a philosophy when I wasn't deeply grounded through my own experience, it almost felt dishonest. And so I prayed, if I'm going to be doing this work, because it felt so right, because I've known ever since I was 30 years old that my work was to help people move through transitions. It was only around this time that I started to focus on my radar screen, the transition into elderhood. I prayed, give me some experiences so I could really know deep in my gut what it's like to be an elder, the challenges and the gifts. And it's right around that time that I ended up having this health crisis that for a while I thought I might not survive it. And, waiting for the biopsy is, any of your listeners who's been in the experience knows it's the most scary thing in the world. But it got me in touch with my vulnerability in a way I never had been before. It got me in touch with my deepest values in a deeper way than I ever had before. It clarified for me that my work of helping people move through transition was indeed my work, my soul's work, and now I was better equipped to do it than I'd ever been before. And so it was an incredible gift to me having had that particular experience.
You also wrote that you had an experience of being touched and healed by the divine. Can you tell us what happened there?
I had a surgery during that time that was supposed to rectify the situation. It didn't seem to do so. And so after the surgery, I was continuing to have atrial fibrillation that was really frightening that I'd had before the surgery. That put me in a dark, dark place. And one night I went to bed, just feeling this darkness and this frustration and this being lost. And this atrial fibrillation was just going crazy. And I reached out in some state in between sleep and awakeness, Ross. And I prayed to Spirit. I said, I can't handle this. I don't have any answers. I totally surrendered to you, Spirit. If I have work to be doing, gifts that I still are to be giving, then I need for you to make that possible. Help me to heal from this thing that's going on. And at that moment, as I was laying there, I felt something explode inside of me, like an explosion of energy. And I knew, I woke up from that in between sleep and awake state, and I absolutely knew that something essential had shifted. And from that moment on, the atrial fibrillation and all the other frightening symptoms were gone. And that's probably the closest I've ever come to total surrender to something greater than myself. And the answer I got was that, yes, Ron, you still have something to give, and we're going to heal you and help you to give it. But you first needed to learn some important things from this. So that's the experience that I had then.
Wow. Beautiful. Thanks for sharing that story. It brings me to just the one part of the book, which is stories by the fire. At the end of each chapter,
yes,
you share a story from the fire from a different person about their experiences with eldering. What was the inspiration? Why did you include that in the book?
We all learn more from story than from anything, I believe, Ross. You know, we humans are storytelling, story creating, story savoring beings. And I could have a book that, no matter how well written, has lots of concepts in it. But good stories help to make those come alive for the readers. And everybody who wrote these stories that end the chapters of my book had been on some of our retreats. And I put out a call and say, I want stories that would fit with these particular themes that I unfold throughout the book. And I got about 40 of them. And I think there were only 12 or 13 chapters. And so I had the wonderful, wonderful task of sorting through 40 wonderful stories and put one at the end of each chapter. And I've heard from so many readers that it makes it so meaningful to them, something they can personally relate to with the heart and not just with the head.
Yeah, it's fantastic. The other thing that's very interesting to me, I want to hear a little more about it. Chapter 3 is titled Nature as Healer and Teacher. And I know the retreats that you lead are set in nature. Why is nature such a fundamental part of this process of conscious eldering?
Well, nature, Ross, has been fundamental to most of the rites of passage that we know about throughout history. People have always left the community, left the world of people and people's constructions to go into the natural world. The natural world is where we are most easily in touch with what is most true and authentic and natural in each of us. We in today's world, we tend to think that there's nature and here's us and we're somehow different. But we are beings of nature, and we are intimately interconnected with all the beings and the forces of the natural world. They operate in us. I mean, as humans, we've got some special gifts that the animals and others don't have, but we are still natural beings. And the processes of endings and beginnings that define life in the natural world are the same processes that define our growth as human beings through endings and beginnings. And so going into the natural world and looking within to see our own authentic inner voice, it's something we could do there that it's hard to do when we're surrounded by the ideas and the concepts and the indoctrinations of the human community. Nature is where we get in touch with our deepest inner voice. And so that's why we do our retreats in the natural world. And we're indoors a lot of the time. I mean, our people are in their 60s, 70s, 80s. They can't go sleep out in the cactus like they could back when I was leading vision quests in the earliest part of my career. But we spend a lot of time in nature. And I think almost everybody who comes on our retreats will tell you that, yes, the conversations, the sharing, the ceremonies were beautiful and they were powerful. But on my day of solitude, we have a day of solitude in nature, they say that's where it opened up in a way that was unique. They're so grateful for it. Something about nature is so heart and mind opening.
Are there ways that we can go out and connect with nature in our everyday life if we have a few hours that you think are helpful for this process?
Oh, I definitely do. A lot of people who have done our retreats, and others I know who have not done our retreats, go out and they spend several hours or sometimes a whole day, sunrise to sunset, in the natural world. But there's a difference between being out there with a fly rod, and I love to fly fish, and I think any experiences in nature are good for you. But being there without being goal oriented, without having the goal that, well, I'm going to hike to the end of this trail, or I'm going to ski so many runs today, or whatever. Being there, being quiet and being open, and opening to spirit however we know how to do it. Perhaps carrying a question with us throughout the day. Some people call it a sacred question that we carry with us, almost like a mantra, and then just let nature present us with some little synchronicities, some signs, some feelings, something like that can help perhaps to speak to the question we're carrying. That can be the most wonderful gift that we could possibly give ourselves. And so I encourage everybody especially everybody who is committed to their growth, to build some time in nature that is not particularly goal-oriented, just to be there. Build it into your life. I can't think of anything more soul-sustaining that we can do than that. And if we know that we're on this journey into elderhood, then we could use that time to do some of the inner work, the practices, the processes that I talk about in my book that are part of this journey into elderhood. There are various kinds of inner work, and we can use that as undisturbed, quiet, special time to do some of that inner work.
Yes. Wonderful. Thank you. Just a reminder to our live audience, we're going to be getting to some of your questions in about 5 minutes. So go ahead and keep them coming in, type into the comments field there on YouTube, and we'll tend to those shortly. In chapter 16, Ron, you wrote something really powerful. Chapter 16 is finding support and community. And you wrote the following: conscious eldering is a big, significant cultural paradigm shift. I know few, if any, people who have made much progress on this path in isolation. The support of community is necessary if conscious eldering is to become a way of living and growing, and not merely an intriguing concept that makes little difference in the values we carry and the choices we make about how we age. Can you talk more about this for us? What purpose does community serve in the process of conscious aging or eldering?
Ross, we humans are wired to resonate with others around us. And we're wired to resonate with the opinions and the ideas and the feelings of others around us. We live in a world that does not have any kind of an empowering vision for aging for its older adults. And so there's so many of these stereotypical messages that say there really isn't a meaningful role for older adults. It's just primarily a time of loss and diminishment, and just a time to look out for our own pleasure and security as best we can. If that disempowering message is all around us, and we don't have some other people who share a more empowering vision with us to support us, it's virtually impossible to go it alone and to be the Lone Ranger. It doesn't take a lot of people, but we do need some community who share our values, that we resonate with, that we could be authentic with, we can be honest with, to help support us and to reinforce our commitment to our growth. And what I'm saying doesn't just apply to conscious eldering, even though that's the particular theme we're talking about now. I think for any kind of growth at any point throughout life, we can't do it alone. We need others. And, I'm sure that you are well aware of, and your listeners are well aware of much of the research being done around the world now that is showing that one of the most important factors in healthy longevity is community. And one of the contributors to dis-ease of all types is isolation. We need community of kindred spirits.
Kindred spirits, that's a key word there, isn't it? It's not just any community, is it?
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure that just having a bunch of people that you share social activities with and everything is good for us. But the kind of community that is most soul nourishing and soul sustaining are kindred spirits that share our values, where we can be authentic with them, we can support them, they can support us. That is absolutely, absolutely critical, I think.
Yeah. I think we have time, Ron, for one more question before we get to the audience questions. And this new edition of the book includes a new chapter focusing on spirituality's role in aging consciously. And it explores how to differentiate our authentic inner guidance from the many conflicting voices that assail us from without and within. That's a quote from the book itself. I'm curious, just in brief, what is the role of spirituality in aging consciously? And is it a necessity or is it optional, do you think, having a spiritual life?
I think it's pretty much a necessity. When we are younger, all the way up toward retirement age, I think, our ego selves can get us a long way, our personality selves. help us to succeed in the world, to accomplish a lot of things, to deal with life's vagaries. When we get to the age where elderhood is starting to emerge from us, we're going to find that we suffer lots of losses and diminishments. Our ego doesn't serve us as it used to. Our bodies start to break down. We can't use them in the ways that we used to. We're going to find that as we suffer these losses, we can either just become smaller beings, or if we are more and more able to embrace the spirit within us, then we can become larger beings, because that spirit can shine through us in a way that it usually doesn't when we are younger. And that's one of the gifts of elderhood. It gives us an and that's one of the reasons I think for this whole journey through life and for the diminishments of aging. There comes a point, if we're going to grow as spiritual beings, when we have to move beyond identification with us as ego selves and move more and more toward identification with the spirit that is our essence and our source. And I think that's the goal of conscious eldering, really, to get to our deathbed, having reached the point where that spirit shines brightly through us as our ego selves has gradually faded away. And I think that our spiritual relationship and deepening is the key to our resilience as we age. It's the key to our vision of how we can best give our gifts in this special time of our life. It's the key to us knowing that as we suffer losses, there is something there supporting us and sustaining us. And that is incredibly important for all of us. And I don't preach a particular dogma, a particular religion. There's so many different ways of getting in touch with our spiritual essence. But I think the essence of conscious eldering is making a commitment to finding the way that's right for us, to more deeply let that spiritual light shine through us.
Thank you for that, Ron. I just wanted to share personally, I remember when my grandfather was on his deathbed in hospice care, and I desperately wanted to connect with him and hear his perspective at that stage of his life. And he had nothing to offer me. He hadn't done any personal work. He had not found a true spiritual life. And as much as knowing that he was going to be gone soon, I was heartbroken by the fact that he had no reflections for me at that stage of his life. He wasn't able to offer anything to me as his grandson. Is that something you've seen happen with people before?
Well, I haven't worked in hospice much, and I haven't been with people on their deathbeds. But a great many of the people who come in our retreats are people who have worked in hospice, who have worked with people in their final days, their final months. And they tell me that is such a sad reality for so many people, that they're approaching the great unknown full of fear, not having really done any kind of healing emotionally or spiritually, and not having any sense of connection to anything greater than themselves. And I think, yeah, that's very common. And I think that is really, really a sad state of affairs. And so that's why I think that a commitment to growth is so very, very important. And the commitment to deepening spirituality is so very important throughout our lives, and especially when we get into the final chapters.
Yeah.
And that's sad, the story that you tell yourself, because it's not just that your father was denied the opportunity to maybe experience spiritual joy and fullness, but he wasn't able to give any of that to you. And that's one of the gifts of conscious elders, is to be able to share some of what is most vital and important with younger people. That's always been the role of elder.
That leads very well into one of our first audience questions. Ron, are you ready for that?
I am ready, Ross.
This is from one of our regulars here, wonderful Sabine, who's asked, many cultures extend all elders, for example, Japan and India, a respected status in society. How can Western society cherish personal insights gained by life from all elderly, not just a select few?
Well, first of all, we need to acknowledge that our older adults have lives full of experience, full of skills, full of learning. And whether or not these people are on a path of growth, like the path of conscious eldering, most older adults have something meaningful to give. But we live in an ageist society. We know the ageism around us. And if we make it so hard for older adults to have opportunities to share what they have to give. And so many older people have internalized the belief that after retirement age, it's pretty much downhill. Whatever legacy we have to leave has already been created. This amorphous time with no real reinforcement from our society, from our culture, that says, yeah, you've got something to give. And we're going to find ways to help support you in doing that. And thank God there are so many people and so many initiatives now that are working to combat ageism. And, I don't know if you or your listeners are aware of a woman named Ashton Applegate.
No.
But she is one of, we can look that up, Ashton Applegate. She is one of the leaders of a whole wonderful movement that's combating ageism. And she doesn't teach with or appear to resonate with the spiritual dimensions of conscious eldering, as I'm sharing with you now. But her work is so vitally important, though, just changing our society's perceptions of what older people have to give.
Oh, that's great. I'll definitely look that up.
Yeah.
And thanks for that question, Sabine.
Mm-hmm.
There's another one here from Helen who says, currently, I don't have a community of similarly situated people. Initially, on what should I focus individually as a priority before doing work to find and create community?
I think there are various aspects to this work that I call the inner work of conscious eldering. They're all important. But one of the most important things I can think of is getting in touch with a strong sense of purpose within yourself. Because a sense of purpose, I think, is what will propel everything else. And a lot of people don't have any sense of purpose as they age. Or maybe they thought they had a sense of purpose and it is diminished. And one of my most important teachers, Richard Leider, who wrote the great book, The Power of Purpose, he teaches, I think this is really beautiful. He teaches if you don't have a sense of purpose, and it's important to you to find one, a good place to start, a good umbrella purpose, if you will, is to make a commitment to yourself that every day you're going to try to prioritize. When you get up in the morning, my biggest priority this day is that I am going to somehow grow today and I'm going to somehow serve today. And he says, if that really is a priority, and there's so many opportunities each day to grow and to serve, that is living with purpose right there. And then you take a look, and as you're engaging in things that help you grow and help you serve, take a look and see what brings me most alive. What feels most alive? Because we'll get clues from the ways we grow and serve. And that'll give us clues as to particular ways that we might manifest purpose in our life in our elder years, a particular type of work, a particular gift we have to give, or whatever. So find that purpose. And then once we find that, we're going to realize that, man, if I'm ever going to fulfill this purpose, I need some others around me. I've got to look for some other people who maybe have a similar sense of purpose or some similar commitment to their growth. And so that's kind of a starting point to start looking for others, for looking for community.
Mm-hmm. I love that. Yeah. Grow and serve. How can I grow and serve today? Yeah.
Yeah. And what's so unfortunate is that there are so many people, I think it's a societal norm, that basically say that after retirement age, this is my time just to live for myself, find as much pleasure as I can, be as secure as I can, if that's possible anymore at all. And it's awful hard to grow and serve when you have this whole other value. It takes a real commitment to shifting your mindset to set a whole other process in motion where you value growth and you value service. And that's how the elder in you begins to start to emerge.
I think we have time for one more audience question, Ron. Thanks, Helen, for that question. And I saw in the comments she said thanks a lot for that answer. Mm-hmm. This one is from Beth, who says, does continuing to age imbue us with wisdom? And what wisdom may we have at that stage in life that we don't have at middle age or younger ages?
Beth, I don't think that much wisdom comes from just having experiences. Wisdom comes from having experiences, reflecting on them, seeing what we could learn from them. I don't think just as we age, we necessarily grow wiser. I think a lot of the wisdom that we have to give as elders has to do with we've been around long enough to get a bigger perspective on things, a bigger picture perspective on how life happens, to see that most of the time things are never as good as they might seem, or they're never as bad as they might seem. We've had enough time to see that as we go through life's changes and transitions, that there's a lot we can learn from that. Younger people oftentimes get lost in the pain or the confusion of transition, but older adults, and I think that's a big part of elder wisdom, can teach younger people, hey, when you're going through big changes, through tough times in your life, these are ways that you can work with it. These are ways that you can relate to it. These are ways that you can relate to loss, not as something to overwhelm you, but as something that can play an important role in helping to open you up to a new chapter. As one thing dies, a new one begins. A lot of this wisdom only comes with having been around for a long time, I think. And taking a look at our experiences and seeing what wisdom can I distill from this. Thanks for the question, Beth.
Yeah, that's a good question, isn't it? That really hits home for me too, is being sure to take the time to actually reflect on and integrate the experiences to actually gain the learning and insight.
And that's one of the real gifts of community, I might add, because if we have others to share our learnings, our experiences with, it makes it real, and it helps to deepen our understanding of what we've experienced, and we help others to deepen their understanding. It's hard to do it alone. Oftentimes we need others who can help us to get perspective, to see a bigger picture when we can just get lost in in the maze of our own thoughts along the way.
Thank you, Ron. Thanks, Beth, for that question. Thanks, everybody, for your wonderful questions and comments, as usual. Such a great community we have here with Banyan Books. And Ron has a poem that he's going to share with us to close. Now, before we get to that, I just want to remind people we've been speaking with Ron Pevny about the 10th anniversary edition of his book, which is called Conscious Living, Conscious Aging, Claiming the Gifts of Elderhood. Of course, it's available at banyan.com, or you can come in person and spend some time in the shop and get it. Ron is also one of the founders of the Center for Conscious Eldering. centerforconsciouseldering.com is the website. So if you want to check out Ron's work there, you can go to the website and learn more and reach out to them. Ron, before you share this poem, is there anything else you want to tell our audience about any work you're doing or any upcoming programs?
No, if people go to our website, Ross, they can learn a lot about our work. They can see our upcoming programs. We don't offer a lot of programs. We offer a few week-long retreats and a few shorter ones, and you can learn about those on our website.
Okay, that's great. Thank you. Now, this poem is written by a woman named Kathy
Carmody. Yeah, and Kathy came on one of our retreats back in 2012. She was not a poet, but on the day of solitude in nature, something opened up in her, and she said that this poem just arose. It needed expression, and it turns out that it's become one of my favorite poems and one of the favorite poems among all those that I know who are sharing conscious eldering and conscious aging with others. And so I'm delighted to be able to share it with you right now. It's called Becoming an Elder. Leaving behind my journey of struggling and racing through the white water of many rivers, I become the river, creating my own unique way. Leaving behind my self-imposed role as a tree upon which others have leaned, I now become the wind, with the freedom to blow whenever and wherever I choose. Leaving behind the boxes I've created in my life, crammed with roles, responsibilities, rules, and fears, I become the wild and unpredictable space within which flowers sprout and grow. Leaving behind the years of yearning for others to see me as somebody, I soften into becoming my future, with permission from self to continually unfold as I choose, without concern for how others may see me. Leaving behind years of telling and teaching, I become instead a mirror into which others can peer and view reflections of themselves to consider. Leaving behind the urge to provide answers for others, I become, in the silence of this forest retreat, the question. And leaving behind the rigor of my intellect, I become a single candle in the darkness, offering myself as a beacon for others to create their own path. I become an elder. And my final words for those of you listening to this are that we live in some pretty dark times. And we need a lot of candles in the darkness. We need a lot of people who are willing to shine our light. We need a lot of elders willing to shine our light and to give our gifts to help dispel the darkness. And that's going to be our hope for a decent future for ourselves and for the generations to follow us. And shining our light has always been the role of elder. And in these particular times, it is as critical, or maybe more critical than ever. So thank you for listening to this interview with me and Ross. I've appreciated you being here.
Thanks for joining us for Branches of Wisdom, a podcast of Banyan Books and Sound, Canada's spiritual and healing resource since 1970. Our podcast producer is Jacob Steele, and I'm your host, Ross McKeechee. Watch all our conversations on YouTube by searching for Banyan Books, or listen on your favorite podcast platform. Please subscribe, follow, like, and leave your reviews and comments. We love to hear from you. For all our live events, books, and more, visit us at banyan.com.